5, and I'm going to call the meeting to order. And the first, well, really the second item on the agenda is to accept the agenda. Does anyone have any amendments to make to this agenda? And if not, I'll entertain a motion to accept the agenda.
So moved.
Thanks,
Second.
Barbara. Thanks, Jean. All in favor, raise your hand.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Thanks. The next item is to amend if necessary and then approve the minutes from our meeting last week. Did everyone have a chance to review the minutes? Thanks for preparing those, Jean. Actually, that's a question we should deal with because we don't have Patricia here.
And I don't believe I sent them out. I think I sent them to you, Connie, and then you had gotten back to me with a couple of minor things, and then they went off my radar. So I owe that.
I sent them out.
Oh, you did? Okay.
My
did. Email is like everyone else's.
So, well, we do have I'm going to make a note. Maybe I'll do minutes for this week, unless I have a volunteer to do minutes for you, Will?
Yeah, Patricia can't get into the meeting. Hang on one second.
I don't see where she's asking to be admitted.
Yeah, she just texted me.
That's odd. I used the link on the top of the agenda.
Yeah, so did I. Let me. I'm just going to send her the link.
Okay. All right. So, so hopefully she'll be in, and then if you want, you can transfer any note-taking responsibilities, Jean. But so far we have Barbara moving, you seconding, motion carrying, and we can move on to the minutes. Did everyone have a chance to review those minutes? If so, any amendments necessary? And if not, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved. Or I'll second.
All right.
Fine.
Okay.
We'll take Jean as the first mover and Barbara as the second. All in favor, raise your hand.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, the motion carries. The next item on the agenda is public comment. We do not have anyone here from the public at the moment. So we will hope that Patricia gets here momentarily, but let's move on to 5. And Barbara, if you just want to report about what you did in order to create our repository, that would be great.
Well, at this point, I utilized the email that was set up for the Arpa, Town of Kent Arpa, and I just created a Google folder and I shared it with everybody and created a link for it. I did talk to the town clerk, and I will be able to put that link on the Arpa page of the town website. So taxpayers will get in there. But I did want to point out, FOI says that working documents are not FOIable. So I'm not really sure. I think that the public should have access to our working documents.
Can we make some of the files shareable and others not? In other words, should we make the link on the ARPA page go to things like agendas and, factual information like the interim rule and any reports that come out and are officially released, and then have other items in that file folder shared only amongst ourselves?
So the agendas are posted in a slightly different place. They end up in that right nav. And what we can do is when we have documents that are related to that meeting, we can have a link on the agenda that goes to that folder. And then the working documents are just available to the committee members as they're, as we're working on them, just straight in through Google Drive. It wouldn't be hyperlinked on a web page anywhere.
That makes sense, I think.
And I think there are already some, right, Barbara, you had Darlene put up some documents.
Yeah, there is some stuff on the ARPA webpage for the general public.
Can I share my screen?
Sure.
Sure.
Okay, I think I need to be a host.
Oh, hold on. Who is the host?
I think I am. I just gave you
Okay.
permission, so you should be able to.
I can.
Oh, that's-
So hold on. I think this will do what I wanted to do.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So this is what we've got so far. Joe, I know that Barbara and Jean have been in it. Patricia, you and Joe, just to give you an idea of what we've got. This is our shared drive. I did put the agenda and minutes in here. I know they're elsewhere with the town, but it just, to me, made sense for us to, as a group, have a record of those things here. We have the interim final rule. There's a folder for focus groups, although right now, pretty thin in there, just the members of the public who expressed an interest in attending. Submissions from the public is an empty folder at the moment. Survey questions we will go into, when we get to that point in the agenda, and the timeline is kind of the same. I mean, it's a structure, but it's in the process of being populated. And I think what we're talking about is that besides agendas and minutes, that these folders would not be shareable. Is that right, Jean? Or maybe we don't even do anything in here because agendas and minutes will be elsewhere on the town's website.
Yeah, I think having them just be in the place where they're legally supposed to, legally and reliably posted probably makes sense.
Connie, can you check in the submissions from the public? Because I thought I did put something in there. We did receive something from, oh, I guess I didn't put it in there. We did receive something from the Kent Brewery.
I didn't see that yet. Okay. Okay. And I know that this only had Joe's questions earlier today. Who put up these three?
I did.
Great. Thank you. Okay. All right. I think that.
Do we have the
maybe
list of 5 people that volunteered for focus groups
That's
somewhere?
in,
Yes, we do. Okay, so that's in here. And I just think rather than navigate around in this, even though it's fun to do this with you, that it probably isn't the best use of our communal time. But we all have access and can play in there.
And I did have our IT folks go in and adjust the sharing permission. So everybody should be able to go in and access all of those folders.
Great.
Could I just chime in here for a second. I sent a Google document today, and I see that you have gotten it. It was, you know, something to be shared for all the other members of the committee for today's meeting, but I see that it is there. But here's the thing that I'm wondering is that I'm not that well versed in a lot of the terminology and the mechanics and so forth, you know, of file sharing and all that. So anyhow, if there is some information that needs to be shared with other members of the committee, how is that going to be done?
We could do it the way that you did, which is if you email to the ARPA committee, it goes to everyone automatically.
Okay, so there.
We can store things on the drive.
Okay, so so then committee members do have access to share things through Google Drive?
Yes.
Yes, that's what we were just looking at.
Okay, so here's the thing that I don't understand, because again, I'm not that well versed in this. So Jean or Connie or Barbara, if just like walk me through this as to what the mechanics are of this. Like, for example, I have, you know, that document that I sent was a Google document. And in order for me, how do I send it to Google Drive for storage and sharing? If you can go through the steps for me, then this way here, it'll help me understand that.
You know what,
So-
Joe, I think that unless other people have questions about that, that maybe we could do that on the side so that, you know, you could even, I could direct you and you could share your screen and you could even practice.
Sure.
But your document is up there because I put it up
Yeah.
there. And
Yeah.
that is a good fallback too if you have trouble navigating. But if you don't mind, what I think might be better than us doing this live is for you to set up a time with me, and I'll send you a Zoom link, and just like we're doing right now, I'll have you share your screen and I'll direct you on how you can do it.
That's a great idea.
Sounds good. I think it's a very simple thing anyhow.
Yeah, it's easy.
Yeah.
Once you get in the habit, it's pretty easy to do. But yeah, okay. All right, good. So the next item is old business, and there are several things underneath it, sub items. And the parens with written reports with any discussion items noted was my attempt to shortcut some of the wordsmithing that we might otherwise do, you know, in the context of a meeting. If we want to be expedient, we can do this in between meetings and submit reports and then discuss those reports. Just like you did, Joe. So the first item under old business was our environmental scan, which is a fancy way of saying, let's look at what other people are doing and record it and share it. And so you put together a document that, you know, that catalogs what some of our neighboring towns are doing. Did everyone have a chance to read that document?
Yes. I thought
And
you did
now
a
it
great
is up
job
on
with that, Joe. Succinct. It was very helpful, Joe.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Pat.
Does anyone have any questions about Joe's report? I know that I was kind of curious since you concluded that, you know, that Woodbury was probably pretty similar to what we were doing, whether or not, you know, and they may be working their way through it too right now. but that might be a good one to look at to see if they have a survey or how otherwise their 6-member committee is trying to figure out what the needs of the town are. Did you get any more information about that, or is it not quite there yet?
I don't think it's there yet, Connie. It's the information that I had seen on that. It wasn't that specific. So I think they're like in the formulative stages right now. But here's the thing: is that just this afternoon, I happened to see some more recent things that aren't listed in that summary. Is that they had apparently solved, I guess the town governments are now, they're concentrating on this, and you're hearing more information and seeing more information, newspapers and so forth. And anyhow, apparently Salisbury is working on their ARPA plan now. And it seems that it's like made up of the Board of Selectmen, I guess, only. And anyway, they had been looking into their needs, and what they came up with is they've had discussions about possible uses of the ARPA funding, and the uses that they came up with were upgrades to the infrastructure, nonprofits, and affordable areas. Those 3 areas they're, I guess, concentrating on. And also the other thing that recently that I saw too was that in Beacon Falls, they, in fact, they're having a town meeting actually scheduled for tonight to vote on the plan that they came up with, their planned usage for their funds, which includes stormwater management and an amount, $60,000 for 2 heart monitors for their volunteer fire department and emergency medical services. So, I mean, they're far along in this whole process.
Great. Well, so what I had hoped actually, Joe, is, because I'm sure that we will be hearing much more about how different towns are approaching this, like every day, and we'll come across those things, not necessarily on Wednesdays. And so it was really my hope that as the person who put together the initial document, that you could continue to add to it as more information came out. So I know that you did it as a PDF, but if you wanted to do it in Word format so that you could edit it as we go along, or if you just want to make new entries on separate documents, every time, that's fine too. But if you could be the person who catalogs this information, that would be really terrific.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you have any suggestions on that, I would, I'd welcome that, because like I say, I'm new to a lot of, document creating and all that.
Okay, great. So, and did everyone see the spending tracker that I sent along? That's on the agenda, but I don't think we need to discuss it. It's just, again, more information that goes to this idea of environmental scan. And that's really nationwide. So I think that we're going to get a lot more from polling what our surrounding towns are doing, but I think it's interesting to know that there is a tracker document like this to help us feel comfortable that we're looking at the right things, and to give us ideas about how others are doing this in our state and outside of it. Any questions on that? So let's move into the survey development. Matt is not here and we didn't receive anything from him. So I'm hopeful that he still will come through with some examples. Barbara, I want to give you a chance to talk about what you found. Jean, did you find anything from towns nearby us? I know we had talked about Southbury had a survey.
Yeah, so I just uploaded a little spreadsheet of the feedback from the COG towns about a survey. And it looks like not many of them are doing a survey. And Washington borrowed the survey from New Milford, and I just dug around and looked at their survey, and it's literally like 4 questions. The other towns here, I can do a screen share.
Can I ask a question? The survey that is out there now, the P something.
POCD.
Yes, the Future of Kent one. Do we have any idea how many people responded and completed that survey?
I don't.
I don't. We can ask.
Because
They
that
have
would
a meeting upcoming.
I think it would be interesting to know. It might be a good clue as to how many people we might expect to fill out ours. And
that's
if
a
they
good
had
idea.
a low respondency rate, we might also look at why and improve on the questions or the format or something. And if they similarly, if they had a good respondent rate, there might be some things we could replicate in ours. So just thinking about that.
Not only that, but we may actually glean some information from it. So that would enable us to focus our survey on ways that that people were negatively impacted because of the pandemic, and to take some of our findings about community attitudes towards things, like broadband, like improvements to infrastructure, all of the categories that are meant to be funded by ARPA. We might be able to draw some conclusions from the POCD survey without going hog wild. Because I think one thing that does impact respondent rate is whether or not it's easy to fill out. And so, the 4 questions from New Milford, in some ways that's kind of attractive, right? Because you could almost
absolutely.
do that on social media. So, I think before we,
that is a huge factor.
pass any judgment on adequacy, we might want to look at, what was the goal there? Was it to get the maximum response and get a lot of quick information, or was it to be super exhaustive? So Jean, were you going to share your screen on that? And
on the oh, can you enable for me, Barbara?
Or hold on. You should be okay.
Thanks. Where did that go? Now I just have to find the document. Oh, I closed it. Hang on 1 second. Can you see my screen?
Nope.
Hold on 1 sec. That's interesting. I just swapped which screen is which. And even did not mean to do that. Um,
While we're waiting, Barbara, do you want to talk about the surveys that you found?
I found two. I was just searching around on the internet and they're very, very similar. They're very generic. And I thought that might be a good place for everybody to look at those and maybe pluck some questions off of those. I'm really thinking that we need to not ask open-ended questions. And I think I said this last time, but I think it's important to ask questions along the lines of, was your employment impacted by the pandemic? And if it was, how? Was your childcare impacted by the pandemic? Those kinds of questions. And then the other thing I found was, I just pulled the one question off of a very different survey, but I thought it would be useful for us, where they ask you to rank the top 3 priorities that you see in the community. And there was a choice of maybe 12 different things. And I thought that might be a good thing to do.
I liked those questions. I didn't have a ton of time to review everything that was up there. But I did see that, the ranking, and I thought that that was a really simple presentation that could just be done in one question. So, and I agree. I mean, I think that what we need to, and maybe we'll get into this some with the focus groups, but the primary thing that we're going to be looking for from residents and business owners and people who work in Kent is information about, you know, whether or not they were negatively impacted in the areas of their employment and their childcare, and whether or not they were able or, you know, had difficulty accessing health and medical care, could meet their living expenses, including food, heat, rent, mortgage, education, loans, utilities, those kinds of things, because that will give us what we need to know about, you know, the magnitude of those negative economic impacts to our townspeople.
mhm. So
I
what's
think
on
an
your,
important part of it is the not just was your child care affected, but was your child's education affected? Did you have easy access to the internet? Did your child have a laptop? Were they able to participate in virtual learning at 100%, or did their studies suffer? So maybe childcare is too narrow a term. I think that education is going to be one of the big areas, I imagine, that people will say they were adversely affected by. So we might
So
want to give, yes.
something I didn't know until I was working on this more carefully over the weekend is that there's a whole separate funding stream that is education related.
Yeah,
And
and I know that
Yes,
they
there
have
is.
been very busy working collaboratively within the region and locally to make sure that all the children's needs get addressed. So personally, I don't think we need to focus on that for 5 minutes.
I think that the other salient point, Barbara, too, is that actually none of this ARPA funding that we are considering can be spent on education related stuff.
No, it's not one of the
There are
categories.
really,
But
well-defined
it can be
categories.
spent on broadband, and I would spend more than 5
Yeah.
minutes trying to put together an argument to spend some money on broadband.
But we only have
I think it's quite
$800,000.
Yeah, I think it's likely that broadband will come out of this as a recommendation, Patricia, and I wonder, because
Yes.
the town has a separate subcommittee looking at that right now. and it might just be easier. So the things that we need to know from the residents are things that they only know, right? Which is information about how they personally were impacted. What the town might or might not need with respect to infrastructure like broadband and sewer are things that people in our town who are responsible for those things are likely to know, like the subcommittee on broadband and our sewer commission. And so I wonder if we might not, just in the interest of soliciting information that's actually useful, that we can, that we can be responsive to, that we might want to think about the focus groups as the primary sources of information about some of these things that we can spend, that the town can spend money on, including investments in water and sewer, broadband, and the town's own loss of revenue. That those are questions that it's unlikely the residents will be able to provide that much useful information on.
And there is a big bolus of funding that's hopefully going to be coming through the feds that specifically addresses the broadband issue. And trying to address the broadband issue, even if we were to have the whole $800,000 would be a teeny tiny drop in the bucket.
So Jean, can you maybe I think you said that you uploaded this. Maybe just upload it to the survey folder, and if you would stop sharing so we can see each other.
Sure.
Would be great.
Yeah, it didn't glean as much interesting information that I had hoped, but I will move it to the other folder.
Joe.
Yeah, I looked last night. I looked at the and what was in the documents, the ARPA documents. I looked over everything that was there. Anyhow, there was one in the folder for the survey questions. There was one form that I saw that I really thought was really well done to use as a format for a survey. And in fact, it reminded me a lot of, I take a lot of surveys because I get a lot of mailings and so forth. So I do a lot of surveys and I take a lot of surveys, and this format seemed very similar to some of the surveys that I have seen. And, to use something like this as I guess a foundation of the survey, I think that might be a good start. And would you be able to pull that up onto the screen so we could take a look at? Because I think everything that they have listed there, it covers just about everything that that use of the funds according to the guidelines.
Which ones are you talking about?
It was in the survey folder, and I think it had a word format rather than the Survey Monkey.
The Word document where it says, please choose your top 3?
That's correct. Yes, that's the one. Yeah.
Yeah. This is, can you guys see this? Did I share this or not?
Yep.
Okay. So this is what Barbara was talking about with the choose your top 3. And, this would be a really nice way to just very quickly test our community's temperature for what types of non-direct aid, expenditures we might want to recommend. And so I agree, Joe. I think that this is easy. And in terms of format, it looks like a drop down in SurveyMonkey, which is the way that we had intended to, organize our questionnaire. And, again, kind of going to Barbara's remarks about when you ask a survey, when you ask questions like this, you get check boxes, which allows you to very quickly aggregate and analyze information as opposed to soliciting open-ended written comments that you then have to read
Right.
through and can be interpreted differently by different people.
And often respondents are reluctant to invest time in those open-ended questions. It just becomes too intimidating very often. I think this is definitely where we were headed.
Yeah, well, we could just, let's read through this, on our off time, but we could cut and paste this very question if it looks like that, if it looks like it would suit our town. But that's one question, and we're probably going to have 8 to 10 that I would see. If you want somebody to be able to do a survey in 5 to 10 minutes, maybe 8 questions, I would say.
Yeah, definitely no more than 10.
It seemed to me that there was another a folder that was in there, a Survey Monkey. I don't know if it was an example or what, but in any case, that really it got bogged down with all kinds of demographics and so forth, and it to use that as a model, I wouldn't think that would be in the best interests of doing a survey.
My goal in sharing those documents was to throw a whole lot of questions out that we could pluck a few here and pluck a few there and make it easier for ourselves. Never to just take one of those documents and use it as it is.
Right.
I think it was really helpful. Who would like to take primary responsibility with actually selecting the questions that we go with? Because I know that we did have a call for people to submit questions. We've now, I think, maybe there are going to be other models that we borrow from too, but we've at least approached, what we think the concept should be and how we think the information should be gathered. Is there anyone who wants to take the primary responsibility for designing the survey?
I'm already in
Okay.
and have started a shell. So I'll be happy
I
to
think,
do that.
Jean, were you gonna share that with us though? Because I think it would be really important for you. I know that you like working right into SurveyMonkey, but if you don't mind working in Word so that we can, we won't edit your document like crazy, but if we could make comments using a comment box or fact changes, I think that would be really helpful. And it's not as easy to do that in SurveyMonkey. So if you would build the questions in Word, share them in the folder, and then we could review them and make comments, that would be great. Okay, and should we set a goal of having a first draft of 8 to 10 questions, including the one we just viewed, by next week's meeting? Is that okay? Which means that if you could have the draft up by this weekend, then we could all access and make comments and be ready to talk about it.
Okay.
Other comments or discussion on survey development before we move on? Okay, so under new business, we have focus group planning. And realizing that I missed the initial discussion on the focus groups, as I was saying, I sort of, when I was thinking about the focus groups, I know we have the members of the public who want to participate, but I was trying to figure out if we were really going to look at the 5 different areas that ARPA funds can go to, which include supporting a public health response, addressing negative economic impacts, which is that's to residents and businesses and nonprofits, investing in water and sewer, broadband infrastructure, and replacing loss of revenue to the government, to our municipality. That it would seem to me that the focus groups should really be keyed to the people who could give us that information.
The revenue loss category is very specific. There's a very specific formula. I haven't gone through the process yet with the formula, but I can just about guarantee you that we will not qualify for that. We did not have a loss of revenue. We ended with a huge, wonderful surplus.
Yeah, and actually, Barbara, I should say that I don't think we need a focus group for that. I mean, the person that has that information is you. So, yeah, I think that you're exactly right. And you will know the answer, and there's a formula, and it'll be whatever it is. For the investments in water and sewer and broadband, I think that is our municipal groups. I mean, it's town, town building, maintenance, it's the sewer commission, it's the subcommittee looking at broadband. We may just be able to go to one of their meetings and ask them about their needs without having a focus group.
Maybe it would be helpful if everybody reread the interim final rule, because my interpretation of it is that the only way we can spend money in those areas is if we are addressing an underserved population. So I'm not sure if we have an underserved population in Kent, other than possibly the Scotticooks down on Scotticook Road, that we could address directly with these kinds of things. And maybe I misread it. Maybe I didn't understand it. And maybe, Connie, with your legal ability and background, it'll be easier for you to understand it than it was for me. I read it to the best of my ability, but that's the way I read it.
It's seeing what Joe put together about how, Litchfield is putting $203,000 towards their wastewater control facility, and how, there's septic money going in Falls Village. I wonder. I don't know. I think it's a good suggestion, Barbara. I will go back and read that, and I hope that we all do. But
yeah, it would be helpful to me just because of the way that I interpreted it. And I do want to point out that just because these other communities are thinking that that's where they're going to spend their funding, the federal government gets the final say. The state of Connecticut doesn't. And if the federal government decides down the road that this money has been spent in an area that doesn't address the economic harm of this pandemic, they can reclaw that money. So right. Just from my position, I have a very real fear of not being compliant.
Yeah, well, that's a good caveat. And, I personally wonder also, how, when it comes to it, if people will report the level of negative impact, to get us up to 800,000. I mean, it seems like that, it seems like we may, I don't know, and we'll know more when we put the survey out. But it's unclear how we justify this. Yeah.
Could I just comment for a second? I don't know. We've kind of gone from a discussion for focus groups to stormwater. So are we still discussing focus groups now, or?
the idea is, how do we get the information that we need to get in order to fully assess needs, right? And our needs assessment should and could and should assess the need in all of the areas that are, that are
allowable.
available, right, with ARPA funding. And so, in terms of getting information about those needs with respect to stormwater, sewer, broadband, it seems like we have avenues that aren't necessarily focus groups. So I guess I was starting with, can we narrow down what we could expect to get from focus groups, and then that'll help us figure out who the focus groups are.
What were the 5 people that have volunteered so far? Did they fall into any groups that we are aware of?
I don't know them personally, so I really don't know.
They only just said their names. That's it.
Yeah, I'll read the names: Alice Winter, Sarah Baird, Les Lubavitch, Christopher Cox, and Ann Loringer.
They actually do, a couple of them did describe why, and it's in the folder, so take a look. I looked, and when I did, yeah, like one is a business owner. One is, one said that they were involved in the school.
Yeah, one's a
they're
part-time
resident.
person. One has no children. And then one just said they were interested.
So that doesn't, well, to throw out some possible groups, obviously sort of retail and restaurant owners would be one group of people. Non-for-profit organization heads could be a second group. Senior citizens could be a third group. Service providers like accountants or lawyers or yoga instructors or insurance agents, that could potentially be a group. And your basic taxpayer could be a group.
Have we talked, I don't think we talked at all about the focus groups, probably like streamlining the whole groups into like a more general group. This way here, people will still get their opportunity to talk and be listened to. So, and also it would move things along faster also.
I'm not sure I understand exactly what you're saying.
Well, what I'm saying is.
Uh-oh. Can you guys hear me?
I can.
Yes. I can
Joe
hear
might have
Connie.
frozen.
Joe got
I think
frozen.
Joe froze.
I don't know. I like your idea, Patricia. I think those are perfect focus groups myself.
I agree.
Residents or whatever. And this way here kind of have like maybe like a 2-week, 1-week window for all this, for all the groups. And I think it'll move things along faster. And I think it won't scare anybody off either, because there's just one group that's, going to be, at that one, one particular specific group, and it may discourage participation from other people to attending a lot of these focus groups, because want to get useful data from these groups.
We should probably clarify our common understanding of focus groups. I was thinking of focus groups as, a 1 hour, 90-minute, get a room full of a room, maybe 10 to 15 people together and give them a series of questions.
Right.
It's
Maybe
not, it's
that's-
a one-time thing.
Right, Patricia, you have experience with focus groups, I thought,
Well,
yes?
I've observed them. I have used the data that and the information that comes from them to craft a branding or communication strategy, but I have not led them myself per se. There are people that do that. I mean, it's not heavy lifting. I think between us, we could figure it out. But I saw that they start structured, and then hopefully they become just good conversation. That the leader is good at drawing information out of the people, making them feel comfortable and talking. There's a camaraderie that builds with people with similar problems, similar situation, similar challenges. So little by little, a talented focus group leader is able to get people to start talking, and often the most interesting ideas bubble up from the conversation rather than someone saying, question 1, what do you think about this? Question 2, what do you think about that? To get things going, you kind of have to do that, but then it kind of flows on its own. At least the effective ones I've participated in have happened that way. And it is better, I think, to keep them smaller. Maybe even 15 people is too many. I think, like, similarly to the number of questions that you're thinking of for the survey, it might be 8 people, something like that. And if they all express similar needs, similar points of view, you can extrapolate from that. You can assume a lot, because 8 people in the same situation expressing like opinions, needs, whatever, you can assume that that is a sort of generality. You know what I mean?
Good information, thank you.
Yeah, that's really helpful. So is 5 a lot? Is it too few? Is it about right to shoot for something like 5? You named 5 different categories, Patricia.
Yeah, I think we don't have time for a ton more, and I can't even think of another group that would be terribly relevant to this. Other than the ones I mentioned, what possible other groups might we include? I can't think of any, really.
How about emergency medical responders?
Does that fall
I'm
under
sure.
nonprofits?
Could go under service providers too.
And Jean could probably do that one all on her own.
I might be able to.
You know, I mean,
Yeah.
That actually could include, say, you know what? Maybe frontline workers, maybe instead of that, because that could include grocery employees, you know, also.
Mm-hmm.
When I think of frontline workers for COVID, I think of ambulance drivers, EMS people, nurses, doctors,
Well, yes, they're included.
PAs. That I think of that as a frontline worker. I guess food industry people would be in that.
Well,
Yeah, because during the pandemic, it was seen that being able to have, not being concerned about food insecurity did put those workers into that frontline worker bucket.
and
Do you think
also,
that we're
postal workers, in addition to that, postal workers are frontline workers as well.
Do you think, though, that we're likely to get a lot of new information by having that separate focus group?
Mm.
I guess that is just one question that I have is,
Yeah,
if
that's a
we
good-
have our survey and we have Joe Taxpayer and we have nonprofits, I think that, we, like Patricia says, I don't think that we have time or resources necessarily to, to do 10 different focus groups. But if we can think about the groups that will supplement the information that we'll get from our survey, and really do those ones. I think we kind of have to do Joe Taxpayer because we solicited that feedback from the public. So now that people have volunteered, we kind of have to, it would be nice to be able to respond to them and say thank you.
Yeah,
let them
and
participate.
they obviously have something they want to say,
Yeah.
I would say nonprofits is another important group. I mean, Connie, you're representative of that group, but there are other nonprofits less visible than Kent Land Trust, so perhaps that would be a good one to do. I think that seems important. I'm basing it on groups of people that I think could have suffered the most.
Right.
So,
well, yeah, I think that our nonprofits like affordable housing and fire department and different organizations that are actually serving people's basic needs are going to be really important for providing that information. But the other thing about it is, when I looked at the video that the Community Foundation put on and the book that they put together, is that in many cases, municipal governments are going to be relying on their nonprofit service providers. If Kent didn't operate through its municipal government, its food bank, then it would be relying on a nonprofit, right? So some ARPA monies are likely to be subcontracted out by the town to the nonprofits that are providing the direct services where the town can't provide those direct services. If that makes sense. All of which Barbara is thinking, well, the town is so ultimately responsible for reporting back on all expenditures, and so the town has to be pretty sure about what it does in that regard. But I think that in some cases it probably, it might make sense to take a look at that for our nonprofits.
There's not going to be any such thing as just cutting a check and giving somebody a big chunk of money. I've got to be able to follow that money right to the end point. So, but that's a sort of another discussion that we don't need to get into the weeds about, but there are some processes that can be put in place so that can happen.
and I'm thinking, aside from the obvious nonprofits, I'm thinking, I don't know, an organization that helps women who are victims of domestic violence. Organizations like that maybe have a lighter profile, not so established, not so well known, but I read a lot about domestic violence increasing during COVID, and did women's support services suffer any loss of funding, and did they have more people to help? So
maybe we can invite a few particular representatives to join our social service focus group.
Yeah,
organizations that the town already provides grants to, and the social service group should include all of our ecumenical services in town. They've got a real pulse
Yeah,
on,
that's a great point. That's a
they've
great
got a real
Faith
pulse on
base.
the community.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Right.
a very good thought.
So
So
maybe
Joe
between,
taxpayer, nonprofits, do we all agree about retail and restaurants?
yes,
Yes. Yeah.
Service providers, that's a broad category, you know, the little gym at the back of
it is, but
Van
when
Lo-
you think about it from, how about people that clean houses and that was their major source of living, and then COVID comes
Right.
along and they say,
yeah,
don't come to my house.
Yeah.
Now, these people, that's their livelihood, they provided
Yeah.
a service. So I
Yeah.
think there are a lot of people like that in our communities up here in the northwest corner. Maybe not so much lawnmowers and snow plowers, but I think there are a lot of people that provide personal type services like that.
Mhm.
yes, I think you're right. How do we reach those people?
You know,
It's
go
going
to
to
the
be
chamber or,
multi-level.
I think the Chamber of Commerce will have its finger on the pulse with some of these. So, what I think maybe we would want to do, it's 5:36. I know, Jean, you're already over your time.
Yep.
I want to make sure that we can close up by quarter of, but maybe taking the categories that Patricia suggested, which are, you know, your basic taxpayer, resident, or business owner, but really resident, because there'll be business owners in the other groups. Senior citizens, retail and restaurants, nonprofits,
Service
service
providers.
providers.
That was
So
it.
5.
well, can't we make senior citizens a little bit broader and just make that social services? Because I really think our social service coordinator here in the town hall would have a lot to offer, as well as Catherine Bacharach, who's in charge of the Kent Community Fund.
Yep.
So it's not
Yeah,
just.
I mean, would you have them?
seniors.
Yeah, I mean, they should come in on that group
Focus group.
so
Yeah.
that they can be
Right, but
part
it
of that.
isn't just seniors, it would be social services in general.
Or people that have
Social services
a perspective
providers.
on seniors. Right? You wouldn't want to do all social services. I mean, Leah might want to be in the nonprofit one as well. You know, if the nonprofit one were to pull in representatives from domestic violence service organizations, which might very well be outside of Kent, it could be helpful to have
I was
Leah be
thinking
part
that-
of that focus group.
I was thinking that those types of entities should all be going together with social service. And the nonprofit groups would be the library, the child center, the churches, maybe the land trust, the whatever.
I think you will find that you'll get less from the nonprofits that way, but maybe, you know, I think that that's a good amendment. Everyone else, what do you guys think about that?
Well, my thoughts are, you know, the more focus groups you're having, the more coordination is going to be needed in order to get all these groups together and so forth. So how is all this going to be coordinated?
He froze up again.
Well, okay.
Well, let's
So-
finish just the list of groups. So you're
Yeah,
saying,
let's finish that question. Yeah.
and then we can go on to how it will be managed. So it's kind of a combination, Barbara, you're saying, of the people that provide social services and the clientele of social services, correct?
Yeah,
I think that would be an important group, and it really isn't the same as a nonprofit, is it?
Not to me.
Yeah, so maybe we switch out seniors for that, and within that, seek to talk about seniors, their needs, their challenges, basically. So we still have only 5, but we've recast the seniors one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
That works for me. That works for me.
I think that makes sense. Good.
Okay, so here's what I can do for the next meeting. I can put together like a little choreography on how I think the focus groups could work. I'll list the 5, how we could reach people to invite. I think all of us on the committee would want to participate, or only some of us, I don't know. We could talk about who will lead them. I don't think we want to go hire a professional focus group leader. That is not, I think, in the cards. So I think between us, we can sort of perform that role effectively if we develop it and talk about it. I mean, you always have to have food available. That's another key thing. For a focus group, doesn't work if you don't have snacks and beverages, and we have to have a place where people feel safe, obviously. But I can put together for our next meeting, to cut this short, a sort of general description and choreography of where I think we could take it, and then all of you can look at it. I'll try to put it into the system before the meeting, and you can read it, and then we can have a discussion about it.
Okay.
That sounds awesome. Can I, just one point of clarification? I think that I'm hearing you envisioning an in-person meeting, which I am fine with myself. But I want to
Good
know
point.
whether or
We
not
could
the
do
town would support that.
That's an interesting question, Connie. It could be done by Zoom. How it could be.
Mhm.
Something that probably is missing in the it could be, you want people to open up in focus groups, and I don't know if Zoom doesn't help me open up, really. It's almost kind of like a barrier to that for me. But it's a very viable and easier to manage situation. We don't have to have the food, the beverages, all of that stuff.
And we, there is the convenience factor for somebody. So when you think of how
Yeah.
I come to a focus group and I'm, volunteering my time to give my voice to an issue, and maybe we would actually get a better, a larger group of people, from the safety factor, even though that the large meeting room would easily hold 10 to 15 people safely spaced. But I just went through a 3-part equity training that was 3 hours each day. No, it was 4 hours each day. And it was great. I mean, the person who was the facilitator was very good at what he does. And, I think we would, if we're sensitive to making sure that, the people running each focus group are there to facilitate and pull people in. And, you do the usual stuff, the ground rules, we're really hoping to, hit these goals, and we want inclusivity. And, I think if you set it up as an inclusive experience for people, we might get more people.
Well, we don't want more
Yeah.
people though. We want
No, I
8 to
mean-
10 people.
Right, no, I mean, if you put out an ask for 8 to 10 people and you do an in-person in the, situation we're in now, we may get 4, but we may get 7 if we say, hey, you know what, we're gonna do it over Zoom. And
So,
the
Patricia,
experience was great.
since you have some expertise, I think just consider
I
those
hesitate to call
things
it expertise, but a little experience.
experience.
Yeah.
If you would just consider those factors, I think putting together a scope to help us,
I
really
think
focus on
I
what
can
we're
see
looking
it
at.
working both ways, really.
Okay.
And I will sort of, and well, and I have some ideas on how we can make sure we get people there.
Joe dropped
Okay,
off.
so I'll do that prior to next meeting, and we can talk about it so you could add it to the agenda for next meeting.
Great. So we've got more old business, and that's nice because it means we're moving through what it is that we need to do. So as far as agenda item 8, we can all as hosts admit Joe now. Agenda item 8, which is the next steps for next meeting. What I have is Jean building out the survey questions in a Word doc, but as appropriate for all of the tools that we know are so effective in SurveyMonkey, like yes, no answers and drop-down menus and things that are easy to be quantitative with rather than qualitative.
Mhm.
And Patricia putting together, some sort of a scope document, a choreography, if you will, of how these focus groups in the areas that we mentioned will work. I'm hopeful that Joe will continue to build our knowledge of that environmental scan. And I encourage us all to, if we see surveys in passing that have questions that are interesting, to upload them to that survey folder so that Jean and the rest of us, as we're reviewing those questions, can borrow from those, just the same way as Barbara was saying we should borrow from the ones that she's already put in. Did I miss anything?
Yes, I think Jean and or Barbara were going to find out from, I'm bad with acronyms, POC, blah, 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 about the Future of Kent survey. Number of respondents.
I don't think they've released that information yet. I think their meeting is upcoming. They just
Okay.
closed the survey last week, but absolutely, as soon as that information is available, I'll make sure it gets up into our shared folder.
Great, perfect. That's it for me.
Anything else?
No.
All right. Joe, I think that I'm not sure that you missed too much. Oh, but he's gone again anyway. All right. I have a link from Darlene to upload the recording, unless you were going to do that, Barbara, because you started the recording. Which
no, you can do it.
Where will it go, though? I usually have it going to my laptop, and it's not.
Yeah. So my guess.
Actually, I don't think I can.
Yeah, Barbara, I have a feeling it's gonna go to your.
And then
Zoom
I just
account
forward it
in
to Darlene.
Well, no, in the cloud. So you're, and we can, so you need to upload it to that Dropbox link. You're basically clicking the link. It'll browse you out to a Dropbox folder, and then you just, you have to download the video from Zoom to your desktop and then upload it back to Dropbox. And it usually takes about half an hour for it to upload.
Okay, I'll do my best.
Okay,
All right, well, so It is 5:49. Let's adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much for your time. Looking forward
you.
to working together with you again next
Yeah.
Wednesday.
Good progress today. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.